Welcome, Constantin, and welcome, viewers. It's such a pleasure to see you, Constantin, again. I think it's been over a year then since we saw each other. Now, it's probably been almost a year since we've seen anybody other than in our small bubble, right? So you're in New York, I'm in Austin, and it's so great to see you. And viewers, Constantin is amazing. I always think of him as a shining light in New York because New York becomes kind of gloomy pretty fast, and Constantine always has this, you have this energy like a lightness or something to you, and you always, but it's always too with very reasonable thinking. I feel like you're a reasonable thinker and you have lightness toward you, and in your approach and your disposition and how you present often even things that might not be popular by people and not undesirable to hear. And so I appreciate that. And it's such a pleasure to talk to you. And I know that you currently became involved with Waves Financial, and I love Waves Financial. I really respect the guys that started it, and they do a really great job. And I think they did such a great job, partnering up with you and taking you on. And I know that you're a managing director, and I'd love to talk a little bit about that today. And we'll talk about the Bulldog Capital Fund of Funds. And I also want to get to just chat about life a little bit too. But let's start with Waves Financial just to get that out of the way, because it is such a great job to be doing right now. Funding is really important, especially in the current world, and being actively deploying fund and financial institution right now is more important than ever. And so the work you're doing, I think, we thank the doctors, we thank a lot of people that are moving forward our lives right now, making sure that we are safe and we're in a good position. But I think that financial institutions that are deploying, that are supporting in entrepreneurs and moving our back end world, if you would, forward despite of current lives and not sitting there, kind of being scared. I think that's a very, very important work, and I salute you for that. And let's talk about Waves Financial.
Yes, first of all, it's a great honor to be on your show, Irina. And yes, it's been a while since I think we've seen a lot of people face to face. There's no more crypto conferences, meetups. They're returning, but it's still we don't know what's going to happen next. And the world's definitely changed. And I want to start from the positive aspect, before talking about Wave, even the fact that we're having this conversation in Zoom, and I've actually connected with a lot of people that I haven't spoken for a while. They're in different parts of the world, whether we're talking about UAE, Australia, Russia, Ukraine. I've talked to people from Brazil, and it actually also now, if before people were kind of close, they think, oh, let's see each other maybe at some conference or live, and now there is no option. So people all of a sudden became more open to the digitization of the of not only communication but everything. So Wave Financial, I'm very excited to be part of the group, because before, as I'm still actually a partner in Bulldog Capital, which is the first fund of funds in the space, and I've learned a lot through my period of being in this entity. We did diligence more than 600 different crypto hedge funds, did a lot of research, and spoken probably 100+ conferences, etc. Right? So, and meanwhile, Wave and their previous history of David Seymour, who's seasoned VC, I think is invested since 1994, 96. I always keep forgetting the actual numbers, and he managed $500 million VC fund. We're making partners, and it was successful. It was actually in Tim Draper Venture Network, so they had a very good deal flow and tremendous exits. And then he was managing his own basically investment bank and successfully sold it. And now, so he's partnered with several, I would say, seasoned also entrepreneurs. Ben Tsai, who's coming from Alliance Bernstein, and Merrill Lynch experience and structured products, derivatives. He was mentioned multi-billion-dollar portfolio in South Asia, and he also speaks fluently Mandarin and Japanese, which is to me quite fascinating. Like, if you speak English, like, especially in crypto, Chinese, like, and Japanese, like you're already like ahead of the curve, right? And I tend to say we have a great team, like, very versatile in terms of skill sets, but also culturally we're so different. Like, I'll probably have all culture presented. We have Matteo Peruccio, who's like is a Italian, and he lives in London, and he's been managing also like a multi-billion-dollar portfolio and working predominantly with private equity and family offices. So great team, a lot of great people, like, who accomplish each other, right? So that's why partially I'm excited, particularly from this, I would say, personal angle, but also in terms of professionalism, right? We add each other, and it's a regulated entity. So for me, it was also very important because a lot of the LPs, limited partners or investors in the fund, they're actually willing to participate like in this game with someone who's also regulated. And honestly, before that, like you remember 2017, 18, like you kind of thought of this like, well, it's not that popular. It's actually complicates the process. Like when exchanges started to get into New York, and this like they say, "Oh, what's all about this stupid bit license?" It's not helping you, right? And then you have to register in every state. Then funds also any term of crypto in your fund, like that's already a letter from SEC, like a very precise outlook, like what are you doing, what's happening. So a lot of funds, ironically, just rebranded their name, saying like alongside with blockchain or something more neutral, technological, but I would say that right now the regulators are, first of all, they're helping a lot. Like Esther Pierce, I'm her fan, honestly, because we repeatedly met in the conferences, and what she's doing for the industry, they're very open-minded. And for someone who doesn't know her, she's a commissioner to SEC, and she's specifically looking into digital assets and trying to work with a lot of legal groups, trying to work with a lot of asset managers, exchanges. Now we have first charter bank, Kraken, and Wyoming, right? So all of that is actually a product of, I would say, local and state legislators, and on a federal level, legislators, and talented entrepreneurs who are like putting in a lot of efforts, money, and to expand the ecosystem. So therefore, the regulated aspect is super important, and being a, I would say, even I know we're very careful in terms of compliance. Like I don't have to say we're the first IRA, but I believe that's a subjective opinion. So we're the first IRA, registered investment advisor in the space. We just didn't find any other, like, crypto native, so to speak, right? IRA. And the core business is we have a Wavemaker Genesis, which is a VCR, and you've mentioned about it, and the investment part is doing actually great. I'm also not allowed to talk about returns, but we're doing great on this side. And wealth management angle, which is basically, you can think about it as almost like equivalent to private banking, just in crypto, because anyone who actually managed the portfolio 1 million plus, like in crypto, whether it's rarely only Bitcoin, it's like Ethereum, then you have 5 to 10 different exotic crypto assets, and it's hard. Different wallets, is different terms. You want to lend.
Yeah, treasury management in the traditional world, okay, is something that requires an expert. Now, treasury management for crypto assets I mean, that's just a completely different soup that's complex by exponential amount of difficulty,
Yeah.
right? It is something that a huge problem. It's interesting you're talking about 2017 and 18, and one of the kind of a that's my experience how it was. The companies, running in and entrepreneurs, they're so experienced. There's everybody seems to be an expert. They all know. And when you would say, okay, well, what about treasury management? They would say, well, don't worry about it. I got it. And I swear that was one of the treasury management and banking. Oh, don't you worry, I got it. And being in space prior to that, to that growth cycle, it kind of was one of the key aspects that you could tell, okay, this company is not going to do well because they have no idea what they're stepping into. And I just wanted to make it a side note. And treasury management, even now, is still extremely complex, and it requires expertise not just from crypto, but really from traditional treasury management. So I really appreciate that you guys are stepping in as leaders and doing that because we need it. The crypto industry to mature needs to have this expertise.
No, yeah, 100%. And I appreciate you emphasizing because it seems like, that there are a lot of folks who are tech savvy and they know how to manage, wallets, hot wallets, cold wallets. They know how to, to use different, like, more sophisticated platforms as Uniswap, like Bison Trails and many other. But I would say that, if you're, to give an example, like I literally, like, this Monday, so day before yesterday, right? I had an interview with Michael Saylor. As like he has $425 million in treasury. So he runs MicroStrategy, which is a publicly traded company, and he decided to basically allocate like a hefty amount of his treasury to Bitcoin, right? So it was, and I specifically try to gear the conversation with him towards what was the rationale behind, like, just like buying such a massive position in Bitcoin, because I'm sure he has other options, right? You have real estate, you have gold, you have, you name it, like CLOs. And I, I was really surprised how well prepared, like educated, and how, like, I would say how incredibly positive, like, his response was. Like, he looks at it as not only like those buzzwords like asymmetric returns, exponential. He's actually very well rounded in terms of inflation risk. Right now, we're in an era where inflation actually kills the entire treasury, right? If you're just holding cash, like you're playing against central bank, which is already like 2% down the line. You're losing like your value, year on year, and also just general like inflation, like the purchasing power, like you might lose somewhere from 6% to 8% yearly, right? If not even 10%, depending of you might not be lucky to be born in some other more autocratic countries where you might lose even more, like 70 to 80%, where it's hyperinflation. But even let's talk about the United States, which is still #1 economy in the world, and yet just holding USD, which is fiat currency, the strongest in the world, is still like hegemonic like ambitions that we have, you will still lose money. And that means your purchasing power like is less, and that means you're burning your investments, you're burning your potential. And he brought me down like one by one to to what will you do, like what will happen actually if you invest $100 million, let's say, in commercial real estate or in gold. And again, not to repeat his answer, like I'm happy to share the link later, but the idea behind was that Bitcoin is this asymmetric, asset class that actually right now for 10 years is still the best possible investment. And digital gold is not just a buzzword that we're using inside of the industry. Paul Tudor Jones, Michael Saylor, and people of this caliber, they actually now not just talking about it, they're actually putting their money where their mouth is. So this was also incredible for me to experience, to pick, their brain a little bit. And yeah, I'm happy to talk about it more, but
it's interesting too, right? Because it's a publicly traded company, and to me, that's the beauty of a current reality is that, when Justin and I were building our exchange in 2013, the biggest question was, like, isn't it going to be illegal? Governments are not going to allow Bitcoin be a thing. There was no alts. Nobody talked about it. I mean, the question whether Bitcoin is going to be legal or not was a valid question, and a lot of industry comes from this, guard where like everything is built against their kind of a regulated institutions, because obviously they would make this illegal. But look at our current reality. In order to be a public company and allocate your large portion of your treasury to Bitcoin is such a journey we have made. For me, in just 7 years, right? In 7 years, we went to like almost thinking, it was dangerous to be associated with it. You couldn't, it kind of marked you as a negative character, right? To actually being to where we have public company diversifying their treasury into Bitcoin. So what a wonderful time we're living through. And what you guys are doing with is also important. It's just the markers all around us to where we are moving into implementation into traditional finance, and that's really wonderful. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about your fund of funds, and really understand how is because you guys are fund of funds for crypto hedge funds, right? So how does this landscape was looking right now? What is there, if kind of what would you say if there are crypto funds who are looking at, at whether doing their fundraising or looking at the current reality and thinking, should they do it, should they not do it, or whatever you think that they're thinking, what is your feedback on the current landscape of crypto hedge funds from the perspective of being fund of funds?
That's a good question. I would say it's not a simple question. So I will try to answer it like in layers, right? So because see, we are particularly like, we were always like more liquid in terms of our strategy, right? So we're 1 year lockup. So the idea was that we don't have even the luxury of investing like in, let's say, in venture funds, right? Something like 8 plus 10, right? That is a longer play. There are actually funds who are doing the fund of funds like VC style, so they invest only in VC funds. We're not doing that. We're investing more in like market neutral arbitrage strategies, like maybe some of the hybrid with faster exits. And so with this, if you're looking at at this market landscape, so it already limits you to a certain degree of or more liquid, right? What strategies are you even considering as a potential allocation? So number two, I would say that again, given the fact that of the nature, the times we're living in, right? When the COVID and the recession, the new level, we don't even know what's going to happen. It's already $27 trillion, our debt and it's getting bigger. This is insane. So people understand clearly that it's going to hit and it's going to hit hard, right? So the long-term plans all of a sudden also changed. So people are very careful to where would they even allocate. So it's almost like a survival game. If before, like let's say your family office and your, just for the sake of example, your net worth is $100 million, right? So for you to allocate, let's say 1% of your net worth, which is like $1 million, right, to 10 different funds, right? Let's say 100K per each fund to diversify, to minimize the risk. I mean, that was okay. Now, what happens, at least from the conversations I have, different investors, family offices, minors, or just high net worth individuals, they're actually trying to identify the safest harbors. And what I mean by that is basically those funds who they believe are gonna survive the recession, and there were long enough in the market through certain cycles, like down cycle and the bullish cycle, and they survived. Funds who have expertise both from traditional side and from crypto, funds that are actually, they have in obviously, positive, some like at least from inception, positive returns, right? It's trivial thing, but still important. And I would say, just funds who have vision, like, who have a very long-term vision, and they clearly understand what's going to happen, like in the coming half a year, like to a year. Like we're not even talking about like 3 to 5 years horizons. It's really hard to predict anything, but at least who are capable of articulating their risk reward ratio, like especially risk management strategy, and explain clearly how they will survive this crazy situation we're in.
That's great. Yes, absolutely. It's definitely the weeding time right now, right?
Yeah.
But those that survive, those that will do, they will do great. And I am very encouraged by the state of deployment, though, in just the traditional venture capitalism. We're seeing so much innovation, opportunities coming along, and I feel that investors are waking up, right? Because they're kind of saying, okay, something that you used to, let's say, talk about to them, and it would be too far off visionary because it would never work, because it would take too long for traditional systems to change. We're now looking around, and throughout all industries, we're basically seeing that a lot of traditional ways are just not working. They're unprofitable, and you have to implement the technologies right now to be able to adapt to this new environment. And to me, that is just so beautiful that we're living through that. And so I feel that through the technological implementation, we have a brighter future ahead of us. And this challenge time that we're experiencing right now, in some ways, expediting us to better lives. It can be hard, and it is hard, but I think we need to stay strong. And we must stay strong together. And so with that, I want to talk more about kind of a personal ways that you are making sure that you are staying together. Maybe an advice that you can give to people that allows you to, find that balance between much demand on the work, right, and then much demand on the family, because you're a wonderful family man too. I mean, you're definitely balanced that, and you have that energy, but also the balance of staying connected with people. And so what is that you can share with the viewers, and maybe with me, that is kind of your internal practices and advices and how to live in this new wild reality?
It's a good question also, but pretty tough question for me, because I don't think I'm balanced enough. Like there's always like the way to improvement, and I mean it's I have enough humility to acknowledge that there's always like this learning curve, like that I'm about to see, like an enormous level. There's a new level opening, and I mean, I try to, like, I run, about 5 miles, like 3 days, like in a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I try to exercise other days when I'm not running, right? To do like pull-ups, push-ups, like some sit-ups and some abs. So basic things, like not a crazy one, like 20, 30 minutes per day, but just like, to make sure that my neck or my back is not killing me as we're like at home, sitting, working a lot, right? I try to do some spiritual practices, which was my routine since I was 20, so it's already, a good amount of time that I'm like not living this, and that's very important part of my life. In terms of family, I try to spend, a weekend with my kids, I can try to make sure that, like with the digital world, what happened, my son just went to, he's supposed to go like to first grade, but now he's virtually studying, right? So it's a bit crazy, we went to school, to real school. We would see like in physical location, teachers, kids. It was not perfect. Listen, I'm coming from, probably the same as you were coming from a Soviet Union background, and it was a completely different environment. But still, we had some life experience. We had something like the connection was physical. Now he started a school like from digital, like everything digital, like Zoom, all the lessons are digital, everything. I mean, you see some of the classmates, I guess they have some, play dates, but it's not the same. It's a completely different environment. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to ensure that he has at least like experiences like we go, hiking, we go to a horse riding, like we try to, I try to spend time with, just playing on the playground, exploring the world, like, gathering mushrooms, some of the like things that like we used to do, like, I don't want to say normal people, but like in a normal state of things. And that's what's probably keeping me more or less sane. Otherwise, it was really tough year for me, like it still is. Like, a lot of some of my family members passed away, like, and it was like, 3 in a row. Like my marriage got broken, like, so that, that's, I think what happened in COVID time, a lot of the things which were also like, they were concealed in a way, like, and you were not able to acknowledge them. They were brought up, and there are two types of reactions, right? Some people decide, okay, we will deal with this new reality. We will do whatever it takes to fight for it, to make it, like, to overcome all the obstacles. And other reactions probably were like, okay, so we will have to start completely new journey, right? So, and I think it was similar to any type of interactions and parts of your life, right? I know a lot of friends who experience similar situations as me, and yeah, I mean, depression is on the rise. It's actually becoming, I think it's already #1 disease. It was before, it was heart disease, now it's depression, and COVID does not help. So, yeah, and I think you've also made a good point before. So as long as we are keeping together and we understand that all the differences, whether it's political madness that is happening or it's any philosophical, like, or language barriers or culture, religion, like any barriers that we have, we understand that there are ways to sit down and to have a normal conversation as human beings and to apply empathy to try to be more understanding and loving. And how hard it is, like, I know I'm saying like it's almost like a philosopher. In practicality, it's super hard.
It's very hard,
but,
right?
Yeah, but even if we try, if we're able to acknowledge the fact that it is possible, and we, as humanity, as like the local entities, like starting from your family, then from your community, then from your city, your state, and others, like we will make all efforts to do that. Then we will evolve, and we will see, more lights, in the end of the tunnel, right? And if not, I guess we will have to experience a lot of other things.
Yeah, and I think that we do, and I think that in the challenging times too, we realize things that value to us. Things like really truly appreciating ability to have your child to go to in-person school is unbelievable treasure, right? With treasure which we kind of just were like, whatever. Right? So
Yeah.
even those that have been criticizing traditional systems are now saying, you know what, I will at least take that. And so I think it really allows us to show a vulnerability, and through vulnerability, we can have a compassionate conversations. Obviously a lot of people are experiencing pain, and through pain they are communicating in anger. But I think even that highlights and allows it for opportunity for that nonviolent communication. And I do believe that we're moving in the world toward nonviolent communication. I mean, the changes, the rapid changes, and this our world's coming upside down. It's not new to the world, right? But the beauty of connectivity and beauty of abundance of information And now, of course, we do live in the overpollution of information. We have generational problems of those who do not understand how to parse their information. Data analysis is not an easy thing to do, and authenticity of information is non-existent for now. But we do have ability to communicate. We do have ability to go and say, oh, well, what else is happening? What are the people are saying about this? And there's the news, and then so we are staying together. And I think that this time, through our civilization, we finally have built ourselves a foundation to be able to take these hardships of changes and actually move them into positivity. Because even though it appears, I believe that even though it appears that the world is disconnecting, we're still staying connected. We're not in isolated markets and pockets, right, where there's no transfer and crossover information happening whatsoever. And that's kind of how the world has been working, right? People talk about manipulation of information and how media is evil, but like the control of information has always been the way the world has been ruled. I mean, in Russia, when Catherine the Great came in, royal women were not allowed to, to get the education. They were not allowed to do that because they didn't want them to have ideas, because they wanted, and I mean, that was on a small group of people. And so manipulation of people have been just kind of how we've been operated, and being disconnected in information, not knowing what happens in the next region, made a lot of traction. And now we know, now you have a responsibility and freedom to be able to go and look and say, what are those different points of view? I think this way, but what's that other person saying? Okay, now this person saying that, let me click and see why they saying that. Now these are rabbit holes, but it allows us to expand. And so I think we live in a world of a better future. And I think that better future is implementing right now in our reality. So I have another question for you. It's kind of leading up question I really like to think about. Okay, so fast forward 25 years from now, okay, and you're looking around, and what do you see?
Oh wow, that's I am missing a crystal ball to answer this question.
Do it. Look into your crystal ball, and I want you to answer it with whatever comes to you.
I would say what I wish to see. I cannot predict, and I'm not a big fan of predicting the future, because I think that's the beauty of this, of us not having access to the future, is actually on the flip side to be able to appreciate the present, right? So, but what I want to see, what I really wish for the humanity, for the people who are surrounding me, and not for everyone else, right? That, first of all, that we'll become more empathetic. That empathy will be a new skill set that will be accepted, in any company. Like it'll be top 3 skills. Then I really hope that people on a massive scale will start developing critical thinking. To me, critical thinking is probably number 1 in terms of how all the different survival mechanisms, right? So I've done a lot of studies in terms of ontological, anthropological studies, and history. Lately, I've been the good thing about COVID, you have time to read more. So I've actually delved into not only economical reviews, which I enjoy, but some popular literature is knowing about Harari, and then some other I've read some works of Nassim Taleb and some other philosophers, and then essentially if you read the history of the humankind, the only way how we can, I would say, even have the capability of differentiating what is right for us, how to, I would say, accomplish the most precious gift that is given to us, which is, to me, I would say, it's a freedom of will. The only way you can do that is by even being able to identify what is important to prioritize things, to make sure that you understand the hierarchy, like, you understand like how the world works around you. And I truly believe that's our next stage, like as humanity, and then on like nationwide, like on any level. If we will accomplish that, then everything else will come along, like literally, like because we will learn how to be less judgmental. We will learn how to be more empathetic. We will learn how to unlearn. We will be able to appreciate the others and understand that yes, it's fine that your neighbor might have a different opinion and he might love completely different things that you do, and he's allowed to do that, but not to an extent that he's also like trying to impose his will on you, right? So somewhere this balance will hopefully will be found.
And so be it, and so it will
You see, like we created the entire wishing like for 25 years from now on.
Yeah. And that's the reality we're building right now for ourselves. And that is reality we're implementing through our children too. The fact that we can speak about this, the fact that we can share this, the fact that people all over the world can hear you say this and agree and embrace it, then they can repeat it. And they can repeat it in the language with their loved ones, they can repeat it in the language with their coworkers, and they can repeat it within the qualities for their children. And their children will be, our children will be us in the very near future. And if we embrace this into reality right now, if we make that our personal kind of a stamina to and virtues, right, to or whatever the words for it, to implement right now, our children will mimic. We learn through observation. We do everything through observation. And I just love that you said I'm learning, because we're so big into I've learned this, I know that, and then I'm going to constantly try to punch hole into anything that comes in new because I have learned that it is so. And that ability to be able to unlearn and have that blank slate to be able to then relearn in a new way, yeah. Or maybe even relearn that you have learned before to be the factual. I think it's just such a beautiful skill. And so I will use that as a new word for myself to kind of try to label when I'm thinking, and especially in those times when I feel stubborn in my head, that you know those times when you're just so convinced that you're right. I think that's the time when you kind of want to open up and be like, okay, what else could there be? Because am I just so much of an opposition of these ideas? And obviously some things are, undeniably, whether it's bad or good, but for the most part, there's all these points of view and questions. And
yeah. I mean, the new times require, I would say, just to add to what you're saying, it's radical transparency, as Ray Dalio put it in his book Principles, right? I think once you realize that, okay, so whoever you are, whenever you are, like, you're given a certain, place in the world, and you're important, you're unique, and there are ways to feel that we're still integral body as one. This oneness, this concept is becoming no longer just like, the sci-fi or just, the pop culture, like, thing, or, we both share certain interests in terms of like Burning Man or some other people, like, who are just like preaching it. And there's a small group of people, like, it's still like, 1.10, 0.1% of the, humankind. But now, all of a sudden, those groups of people, they somehow unite and say, listen, we have different approaches, but the end goal is one. So, like, the organs in the body, they don't, like, my liver does not compete with my heart, like, whether it's more important or whether it has more knowledge, or like it's just, just working and doing its job, right? So I truly believe that's our next step, and it's really hard because the ego was the foundation of capitalism, right? And it's the foundation of who is better, who's richer, who is more successful, or whatever that means. You know, like who has more now, who has more millions in Instagram, Twitter, or like LinkedIn. And we're not an exception with you. We're part of this game, right? So
We are. I mean, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the craziest part. So it's only up to us how we will basically direct the technological advancements and like of the world, and how we'll make sure that they're actually working for the best of the humanity. And I want to be on a positive side, and I want to believe that that is doable, and I'm doing everything in my forces, like just with simple efforts. But I also do think on a realistic side of things, like I would say it will require a lot of sacrifices, and it will require like this radical transparency to a very, very like highest degree, where we will have to like literally accept certain truth which are not comfortable. Like, and we live in this like world where like it's absurd on so many levels, and we now see the all like the patterns of it. We see the backside of it, but instead of just like trying to see, okay, what are the solutions, we're trying to still like the majority of the people prefer to criticize or to send some negativity to other people, like, well, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one cares. No one cares whose fault it is. What I think we should care as a humanity, whether we're going to find a mutual solution.
Yeah, absolutely, because we do need solutions, and we need solutions on so many different systems. I think that we have built great foundation as human race for ourselves. I mean, just looking at the blockchain technology, people talk about cryptocurrencies and all this, and opportunities and returns, and all this financial world, right? But when I think about blockchain technology, I think single source of truth, right? Like a truly decentralized blockchain. Now we don't have many of them. to be transparent, we our industry has abused this word and misused this word and misrepresented this word. But nonetheless, we now see huge benefits in need to have a truly decentralized blockchains and platforms, because it allows us to have immutable ledger, right? And an immutable ledger, I think, is so important because it allows us to have a single source of truth. Our world is built on lies, and we constantly build the structures through history to catch each other and ourselves on these lies. And so, and that is just kind of the traditional space of even capital markets, right? Just to transfer one security from seller to buyer registered, right? You have to make sure there's over 30 steps of basic verification of all these simple questions, and usually there's a whole entity that exists for it. And it's not because they're, it's stupid and they're evil. It's actually so we can protect each other from each other, and I think that the beauty of our world is that we've built these platforms, we've built this ability for ourselves to connect, we are connecting each other. We built this ability to write smart contracts to where all we need to do is just come up to agreement, and then it self-executes itself. We don't have to trust whether you're going to have to, either one of us is going to go back on the decision making, right? So all these things, all these realities become very, very possible in a rapid way if we empower proper systems and if we integrate innovations, right? I mean, and this is a little side note, but I like to say that because it's a little bit off the subject and it seems that way, but it's a great picture. We think about VR and how do we use VR, and we need to think further than just the games. We need to actually think about how do we create the governance in VR and creation for governance, because actually VR, there's a dark VR, and that means that people are through really traumatic experiences through these games and through this really, really bad things that are happening. And these type of things can have a really long-term post-traumatic effect, and that's without even person knowing, right? So but we've built ourselves this infrastructure and foundation, and now is the time we kind of, do we go into the dark abyss, or do we stay and build better future, better, not future, better realities for us right now? And I tend to fall toward better realities right now.
And I actually think that your argument applies to any technology. Like, if you look at the dot-com era, like, did a lot of people try to scam people like through the email, or like, yes, I mean, when Skype, emerged, like there was a lot of scams, like, mimicking some others, people's accounts. Now they're doing it through Telegram, like, or just hacking somebody's like social media. Or as you mentioned, like they're creating some like literally addictive games on purpose, because guess what? If the game is free, so you are the product, right? So it's very simple, right? So you're spending your valuable time playing, in average, by the way, the kids, I've looked at statistics, 6 to 8 hours per day, minimum. So 1/3 of your day, you're actually spending in virtual reality. And of course, it messes up with your brain. Like, your neurotransmitters are not the same. You're perceiving the reality as something completely different. Like, you're not enjoying nature anymore. You're in the world, and you can get married. I actually had a classmate who got married, like online with some girl in Korea. So and this is like way years before. I can only imagine what's happening right now. There's this famous movie that I think is really social dilemma. I actually encourage everyone to take a look at this movie, because this is the only chance we have for survival when this is becoming like even more global as it is again critical thinking. There is no other ways. Blockchain or any other great technologies remains only technology. If people are not able to agree with each other, if people are not trying to be honest, like from the get-go, right? Same thing, like there's a famous panel which I really adored. Like, if you put like garbage in an immutable ledger, it's becoming immutable garbage. So and again, yeah, so you cannot erase it. So again, there is always the fallacy. The fallacy is not in the technology. Technology can be beautiful. It can be advanced. It can disintermediate. It can be faster. It can save you money. But if people are like, from the beginning, they're not willing to use it in the good, like, causes, right? There is no perfect solution. And that's what I hope we will understand pretty soon. That, I mean, of course, like, I think Bitcoin blockchain is impressive, as the biggest crowdfunding project in the history. And it's a platform that disintermediated like several different domains, and I do believe that that is impressive. And you cannot kill it, like, even if you want to, or hack it, like, which is also like a great advantage. And all the other people who are mimicking, like, these blockchains, and forks, I'm actually happy that they're doing it. They're helping to showcase that, guess what? We're strengthening the core, like, the golden standard, so to speak, right? And hopefully it's just not even hopefully, I can see the tendency from the pump and dump times which we're seeing, even though right now with DeFi and this yield farming, it's still, I've just posted like one really funny video about it, like, how yield farming works. Like, anonymous developer emerges, like, and he promises like 100%, returns, very similar to ICO era, right? Now they just packaged it differently, different marketing terms. And I'm not saying that all, God forbid, not all DeFi projects are like that. Some of them are legit. They're trying to strengthen the ecosystem. They're trying to actually solve the problems. But a lot of them who are providing you, I would say, very lucrative returns and yields, you have to be careful. You have to conduct due diligence. You have to make sure that, this is not just like, the greed that is speaking to you, right? But you also want to change the world, and you believe that this particular technology will change the world. That'll be my other 2 cents, what's happening in our industry.
Well, that sounds awesome. So before I let you go, an advice you could share with me and viewers. Just one advice.
One advice. Honestly, I think the best advice is just to stay positive and try to find meaning in everything that is happening to you at this, at these uneasy times. Once we find the meaning, we will be able to understand, that how crazy it sounds, this will pass, and we will find a new level of our growth, of our advancement, and will be new us.
I think so. I really think so. It's so good to see you. I'm hoping to see you soon in person, but we'll take our
Like,
time. We're not going anywhere, and I really think that when we see each other next time, it will be such a joyous moment. It will just really, truly, like never before, will connect better, and I really hope that us doing this call too brought us closer. And I know that I feel much, much closer to you. And I hope that this also allows us to open up kind of the closeness to people and encourage people to stay positive, to look into the meaning and find meaning for yourself. You know, what does that mean to you? And find and highlight your own individuality because you are beautiful for who you are, no matter what, no matter who tells you what, no matter what your inner judgmental self tells you, just know in your heart that you're special, you're good, and you're wonderful. And in a time of doubt, just watch our video, and maybe you get inspired to feel positive and look at the just be the positive who better, I think, than kind of a skeptical and negative, or willy-nilly or whatever it's called. So Constantin, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to see you. I'm looking forward to seeing you soon in the future. Let's stay in touch, and all the things that you said, I know we're moving forward to them, and I know that you are working on it, and I know I'm working on it, and I know we have a huge network of people that are making that reality, and that's how we will make sure that that reality becomes our reality.
thank you for having me, Irina, and I really appreciate your efforts, for your positivity and your energy. So yes, I really hope that if at least several people will be inspired by our conversation today, I think we've reached the goal.
Exactly, and we inspired each other. That's the thing.
Yes.
I feel extremely inspired by you, and I can tell that I had a positive effect on you as well. And that's all we can do. We do not need to make an impact in the whole wide world. We can just connect with each other. We can inspire each other and empower each other and carry that connection in our hearts. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.